All right, there we go. All right, everyone, so let's get started without further ado at this point. This meeting continues to be by Zoom at this point by virtue of the governor having extended his allowable mandate to be able to meet by Zoom. So here we are one more time. Needless to say, whatever we wind up doing at this point, anything that requires a vote will be by roll call. So with that, and if we're all set, let me dispense with that and just roll call for the beginning of the meeting. Jacques Zemecki.
Here.
Joe Plandowski.
Here.
Melissa Murphy.
Hello.
Hello. And the chair is here at this point. Absent at this moment are Dorothy Hertz. Let me see, who else am I missing? David Iverson and Mary Lapry. So you have an agenda before you at this moment, and I'll just take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
And do I hear a
Second.
second? Motion's made by Melissa, seconded by Jacques. All those in favor, I'm sorry, I can't do that anymore. What I love to. So with the agenda approved, Jacques?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Joe?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
And the chair votes in the affirmative as well. Okay. I don't know. There's only one person from the public on, which is Bob Little at the moment. I don't see anyone else. I don't know, Bob, do you have anything for us? Or are you just gonna listen in?
Just listening in, Barry. Thank you.
No problem. One of these days we will actually have a fairly good number of people to do election of officers, but if you're good, I just suggest we continue to table it. We good? Yeah, I'm not seeing
fine.
anyone.
Barry, just to give you all an update, I'm sure you've seen the news that
I know.
I've resigned. Thank you.
Congratulations. By the way.
I am able to stay on remotely through November to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
But I may not be able to make every one of the next 3 meetings for the remainder of my term. So I just wanted to let you know that, and obviously that would impact election of officers. Certainly I'm out, and I don't know who my replacement will be yet.
Right. No, I really do appreciate it. Thanks for sharing that. Based upon what you're doing, I'm glad to see you go. I'm going to put it to you that way. No, that's great. That's just such exciting news, and I wish you the best. And you know, personally, if there's anything I can do to support you in that mission, that's great. It's just
Thanks very
wonderful.
much.
That really is wonderful. So yay, Melissa.
Thank you. And I will join these meetings to the best of my ability. I will be traveling on Thursdays, so we'll see.
Que sera, sera. Yes, absolutely. So that really just brings us to the host agreements, and boy, I would love to have a few more people on board to be able to do it. But a while ago, we decided we were going to start looking at them and seeing if there were any changes that we thought were good to bring back before the select board, just in terms of what was going on, and realizing that the 2 host agreements that went into place were in 2 very different time frames. The Green Lady was the first one, and of course we all learned from our first experience, and then Act Natural with what it is. Mind you, there are only 2 licenses out there at the moment as well, but that doesn't mean that the host agreements couldn't be brought back before the select board to be considered for change in the future. Just one personal commentary that I'd offer before we get into conversation is that there is kind of this growing wave going on throughout the state to start dealing with that. Hang on for a second. There we go. Nicole's coming on board. Hello, Nicole. She may just still be.
Yep, I'm sorry, I was navigating my.
No,
here.
no,
Hello,
no, it's okay.
everybody.
It's not meant to put you on the spot. We're just starting to look at the host agreements. So anyways, the board's sentiment was to at least have an opportunity to look at these and just see if there was any places for additional review or comment that we wanted to do. So I don't know if anyone wants to start the conversation, you know. Otherwise, I'm just going to call on you one by one. Jacques, did you have any thoughts?
Can you hear me, first of all?
Yeah, we got you. You're good.
Okay. Actually, just a point here is Comcast is coming to fix my cable today.
Oh,
And that might be the next 10 minutes, or it might be 3 hours from now. But whenever they do, I will log off.
yeah, no, I understand.
Yep.
And in hindsight, let me do this. Melissa, you're so close to this equation that, you know, we're talking about your board. So I don't know if you have any thoughts to be able to offer to us on that, or comments, and it's up to you.
I don't
Okay.
have any thoughts. It's certainly not something that we've talked about as a board recently. I'd love to hear other commissioners' thoughts, because I can certainly bring something back to them.
Yeah, and I'd probably want to continue this dialogue to next month, just so you know.
Mhm.
Because it sounds like we might lose Jacques in a few minutes, and they don't want to do that. And then,
Well, I'm sorry, it's Comcast, and so the appointment is at 2, but they sometimes show up half an hour early or an
I
hour
understand.
early.
Yeah,
You
Vanna
can't
White
tell.
Vanna White spin the wheel as to when that'll happen.
Yep.
So, did you? All right, so we're good. Joe, what do you got?
I have a few comments.
Yeah, no, please. You're always very insightful.
I'm going to read 2 sentences out of one of these agreements that I hope doesn't appear ever again. It says, the town may terminate this agreement at any time. Companies shall not be required to cease operation at the termination of this agreement. I can't believe anybody put that in a document. It says the town cancels it, but the company could care less. That's section 12. This actually is section 12 of the green lady.
Okay.
And there are a couple of others that are just as nutty, I'd say.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Let me just locate them. Oh yeah, here's another good one. Approval of manager. The town will review and approve the name and relevant information of the manager. I don't understand why the town is doing that. The town certainly can ask for a Corey check, but to approve the person as the manager of the facility, this doesn't seem to make much sense. That ought to be done by the company.
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, and I don't know, but it's not dissimilar in alcohol licensing. And when people hold a license to serve or sell alcohol, the manager has to be, and transfer of the management has to be approved by the licensing authority, which is the town, the select board. And mostly, I think that's, so I think that language is to be consistent with the licensing and alcohol establishments.
But does that tie to the town saying you got to have a Corey check? Because what else do you look for?
You look for a criminal record. You look for, it's certainly the licensing agent, Amy Baxter, in the state, there's a whole process to become named as a manager. So we're looking for a responsible party, and we're looking to have that name and contact information on record should there be a problem.
Okay, I do have another one that I don't understand, but you may.
Joe, let me stop for a minute too. That information is almost prerequisite when you put when any entity applies to the Cannabis Control Commission as well too. And I think that even gets more extensive than just the manager of record with that. So I can see the town duplicating that process. But I'm almost 99.9% sure that that level of information and more detail than that goes back to the Cannabis Control Commission. So sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yes, Barry, you may know what this means. The company shall not utilize butane or propane in the processing of marijuana products. Does that mean you can't use propane to heat the facility?
Just
Or is there some processing that takes place that utilizes butane or propane?
yeah, so Nicole can probably answer that. Jack can answer that. Jack's a little bit more of a chemist than I am.
Yeah.
So let me go to you, but I think you and I are going to say the same thing.
Yeah, that's using the distilling process, they're talking about using butane and propane to actually they run it through and distill out the THC and other things in the marijuana when they're making stuff for cartridges and stuff like that, or for edibles. And the problem being that the residual those processes always leave a little residual butane or propane in, and that's regulated by the government. And it's something then the cartridges would have to be checked for, or what your product would have to be checked for. And it's just lots easier to use to do it other ways.
What other product would you use besides?
CO2.
Mhm.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
CO2 in its liquid form is actually the best, as far as I'm concerned, the best way of doing it. There are other ways. There are other more mechanical ways of doing it that use steam and stuff like that. But really, CO2 is the best extraction.
Mhm.
But in
go ahead.
liquid form, it's cold, right? CO2?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
80, 100 degrees below zero.
Yeah. Joe, I could also tell you too that for a while there, they were using, I'm not familiar with propane, but they were using butane as an extraction solvent as well too. And one of the big problems with that is to make it work as well is the butane had to be under a high, if memory serves me correct, had to be high pressure as well. So there's a recipe for disaster sitting there, using, an incredibly volatile gas under high pressure that's highly flammable. I understand it worked, but I think that was, and Jock, maybe you can lend, or Nicole, you can lend a different perspective. The CO2 process came on board a little bit later on, and because that's just a lot safer to deal with, kind of push those out of the way. But there was, I just remember that. I didn't know they were
Yeah.
using propane though. But anyways.
Yeah, the
CO2
butane.
is non-explosive, so that's a positive.
Yeah, and the butane also was used. I mean, there were kits you could buy on the internet that you could use the butane from butane lighter
Mhm.
refills and stuff like that. And there was a lot of problems with doing that. There were a lot of small fires and small explosions, etc.
I can
And then
believe that.
then even the bigger companies, some of the California companies that were doing that had fire problems. And I say it's not only that, but it leaves a residual in whatever you're extracting. So that's why supercritical CO2 extraction works much better
Mhm.
for actually a lot of reasons.
There's another statement in here that I'll raise, and that says the company will make every effort in a legal and non-discriminatory manner. And then it goes on to say, to give priority to local businesses, suppliers, and everybody else. They call it non-discriminatory. I don't think that meets the definition of non-discriminatory. And I'm just saying that the language, they ought to just drop the non-discriminatory manner and just simply say to give priority to local businesses. I don't have a problem with that. It just says non-discriminatory, and then you turn around and you discriminate against everybody who's not local. You got to think about that and say, that doesn't seem to make much sense. The only other thing I had is,
Can I just stop there for a minute,
yeah,
if you don't mind? So I think you also probably should go back to the Cannabis Control Commission, because depending upon when that document was written as well too, this was just at the very beginning of where the Cannabis Control Commission was getting into the whole social equity program that they've got in place now, to be able to have establishments happen. I don't want to speak too much about it because I'm not as well versed in it as I could be, but I think that what you're looking at in that document and some of the language, maybe the genesis of what was going on with the industry at the time through the Cannabis Control Commission.
yeah, because that, what you mentioned brings up what they have here about a diversity plan
Mhm.
to promote equity for
Yeah,
a whole pile of different individuals. And this economic empowerment or social equity applicant is defined in whatever the section is in here. It would be really interesting if they said, look, here's what we want. We want some people that understand how to run a business, because you're going to go against some really tough competition. And I've run across a few articles about licenses being given to the diversity folks, and they're just getting hammered in the marketplace because they just don't have the educational background to be playing in that game.
Hmm.
And I should send some of those along to you. Anyway, that's it, I think.
hold on for a sec. See Mr. Iverson getting ready to join us here.
Ooh,
Yes.
Dave Iverson, good afternoon, sir.
Better late than never. I apologize, guys.
No, we got it. We're all busy people. Welcome. We're just doing the review of the host agreements at this point, and I'd probably like Mary Lepry's not here. Dorothy Hertz isn't here, so we're definitely going to continue this conversation for at least one more month. But Joe has certainly chimed in about a few things, about what he thought, were some important issues that needed to probably be addressed when reviewing the host agreements. So, Joe, is there anything else?
No.
No. Dave, did you get an opportunity to look those over, or did you have any comments about the host agreements?
I have not had a chance to look them over, but I will, and I apologize, and I'll be here at the next meeting and give you my lowdown
Awesome. Awesome.
on my plug in my.
Yeah, Jacques, go ahead.
just for clarification, so the contracts are going to be rewritten and then both businesses are going to re-sign them? Or is this just for something in the future?
There's, all right, so where we started out with as a mission for this board was to be able to review the contracts, see if there was anything in there that maybe needed to be changed for two different reasons. One is with the current contracts, if we felt that there were some things that need to be changed that have gone along in the process, this would be an opportunity to re-engage with the select board. We'd have to take it as an advisement from us and determine whether it was sound or not, and then renegotiate with the two individual cannabis industries about what changes should take place. And again, if it would probably be, I wouldn't say having to rewrite the whole document, would probably be an addendum to the document if I were going to do it legally, but that's going to be up to town council to make that decision. So, and the other rationale behind it is, although we are limited to 2 licenses right now, that doesn't mean in the future that things can't change. And so, town council had kind of urged us to look at their host agreement that they wind up using and recommend to towns, and just see if there was something there so that for the future, should things change, we have something already in place to start dealing with that. So go ahead, Dave.
Just Barry, and my ignorance, I apologize. Is there something that triggers a review every year of the host agreements? Or are they just, they're signed and they're never really reviewed or changed over the period of how long?
I can't answer that for you, but I will say that some of the information in there, according to the Cannabis Control Commission, limited certain agreements to 5 years worth of time.
Okay.
And so, Nicole, I hate to put you on the spot there, but I know you've had to go and weather through the other side of this. Is that a fair statement to be able to say?
By the way, all your conversations are spot on, so I don't want to interrupt or anything like that. I'm listening, but all the, previous things you were talking about. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I believe it's 5 years. Was my understanding.
Yeah. So, and Dave, you have to realize that the first of these host agreements was established back in 2017 with the Green Lady. And of course, your first one is always going to be interesting, because when you get to your second one, it's like, okay, lessons learned between the 2 iterations. And I think when you compare the host agreement for the Green Lady versus the one from Act Natural, they are somewhat different in nature. And I forget when Act Naturals was signed off at right off the top of my head. But like I said, town council recently has, they're always engaged in the process. Let me rephrase here. So they have, with more towns coming on board doing this, they started issuing and creating a blanket host agreement that would work well no matter what town you're in. And of course, the town can decide to add or subtract language from it. But so we really have 3 versions before us at this point, but all in different time frames. Does that help a little bit? Sorry, you're muted.
No, that's perfect. 100%. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. And Nicole, thank you.
Barry, I don't see anything in this latest document that says that it goes for 5 years or any period of time for that matter.
Although it may not be in the document, it makes me want to go back to the Cannabis Control Commission documents.
I agree, and I recall it as 5 years.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking as well too, because initially, like I said, it's been a while since I've looked at the document too, and things may have changed. But I think at the onset of this, Cannabis Control Commission realized, yes, we want host agreements with the town to make it amenable, so that the industry would be adopted in, and put the town in a slightly more sweet spot. But I think the Cannabis Control Commission realized too that it shouldn't be an infinite process of doing that. So I think there were timeframes established for it. And I'm sorry to say, I'm just doing this off the back of my head without having reviewed it in a bit. So, and if any of you think I'm wrong, please, please correct me at this point. So we should probably just look at that as well too, and just go back through the Cannabis Control Commission regulations, just to see where we're at. Because if that's the case, Joe, that Green Lady one was 2017, was it?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's putting us up to just about a 5-year mark for that.
But
And,
this latter document that you sent out, it's host community agreement policy and procedure rather than the agreement. I wonder if there is an agreement that's been drafted by the town. Because this doesn't look like the agreement. This looks like
Yeah, well,
the policy and procedure for marijuana establishment.
this was the one from town council, was it? Koppelman and.
It must
Ocean?
be, it's one that is marked off.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, again, that I was following the advice of town council with that one. And so I wanted to share it with you at least.
So there must be another document that's the actual host agreement rather than policy and procedure.
Yeah, the host agreements are still under the jurisdiction of the town, wherever the application is being laid at. And that host agreement is really a composite of whatever the Cannabis Control Commission lays out, plus whatever additional stipulations that the town wants to put in. But the stipulations that the town wants to put in go back to the Cannabis Control Commission, because just like what we've seen with other things that go on, for instance, any expenditures have got to be cannabis related. You can't, for instance, take the host agreement funds that come out of it and say, oh, we need new traffic lights on the island, or we need a new fire engine. And that's how we're going to pay for it. They somehow have to be all cannabis related, although that verbiage is there. It can be, it's up to the individuals to make the construct of what that relationship is.
Yeah.
And I know I've heard, if you've kept your fingers on the pulse of what's been going on around the state, some towns have taken that at a great degree of liberty for what that means. And I think that's been causing somewhat of the kerfluffle as well, too. Does that help?
Yeah, don't use it for the town dump.
Yeah. It depends if you were dumping cannabis stuff out there, maybe, but that's another conversation for another day. Now that's also very strictly controlled as well. Did you all have anything else on this? No.
I don't.
All right. So like I said, I think just in fairness, I'd love to hear from Dorothy. I'd love to hear from Mary on any of this, and continue this conversation till next month if you're all good. And people saying yes, beautiful. Anything from you all that you want to discuss at the moment? I usually just put this in here so that Joe, you're a wealth of information about what's going on out there. Thank you for continuing to share things.
I find this whole marijuana business really interesting. I sent you something on Colorado. That is, I think, really worthwhile looking at. It's got such good data in terms of what's happened in the Colorado experience, presented in a very nice way. And that sheds a lot of light on what's happening in that marketplace. I thought when I first got on this committee and started reading to figure out what was going on, that this was going to be a highly profitable business for a lot of large corporations. And boy, they're getting hammered just terribly. I had no idea it was as bad as it is, but it's not good right now. And that will change because there will be a lot of people that'll fall by the wayside. But you're still against the very simple thing, which is you've got legal marijuana versus illegal. And the difference is taxes, and taxes are pretty steep. The other difference is regulations, which are very costly. So the illegal folks are going to be at an advantage, I think, regardless. They'll always be at an advantage because towns are not going to let the taxes go away, and they're not going to ease up on the regulations, which they really need the regulations. So you've got the one side against the other side being illegal, which is going to have a lower price product and better distribution than the legal side, because the legal side in the state just can't cover all the areas in the state. And besides, the illegal folks will deliver it to your home without any problem if you really want it that way. That's a real problem, and it's not going to be easily solved.
I'm not going to disagree with you. And all of a sudden you've got my head racing back to the days of prohibition where it was like, oh, here, have bathtub gin.
Yes,
I don't know what's in there, but
that's the problem. You need
And-
the regulations to make sure that whatever people are using is safe. However, you got the illegal folks, what are they doing about checking out the quality? That's exactly right. So they're lower costs. And the taxes issue, all these states and communities are saying, we're going to get rich on all of this transaction that's taking place. Well, I don't know. If the taxes are like in California, they're lowering the taxes simply so they can survive against the illegal folks. Other than that, I don't have anything to say.
anyone else, since we're kind of in the broad range of topics at the moment? Yeah, Jacques, go ahead.
Yeah, we're sort of in a weird time here because all the states have different licenses, different, standards, et cetera. I believe when it gets nationalized, we will see a lot of little companies are going to go out of business and the big corporations will come in. But the market will actually get much more equal because the states will no longer really regulate it. I believe states probably can still tax it, so there'll still be that. But the big corporations, one of the things is that if California has a plethora of excess product, there's nothing they can do with it. It just rots, or they burn it, or they just throw it away. As opposed to they could be sending it to New Mexico or Florida or someplace that had a bad year or is just not doing well. And so I think the prices will come down and it'll be a little bit more equal, but it is always going to be a problem with local growers, and people are always going to go to local growers that they have been buying stuff from the past 20 years from. It's just, and probably local growers can grow more strains specific to their area. But there is there's absolutely billions of dollars right now in THC and people wanting to grow pot eventually for everybody. And that's mostly big corporation money. Dave?
I see it, and I know there's a fear for the big corporations, but I see it more like the craft beer industry at this point. And I think when it gets legalized nationwide, that will be what keeps these small guys like Nicole or like Act Natural. They're going to find a kind of a craft corner, or they're going to have that one kind of bud that everyone wants, or that you can only get here, you can only get from them. So I fear the big guys, but I think that it's going to be the small craft guys that have kind of new, funny, different stuff that will survive. There will still be the big corporations, but if you go to a liquor store and sit out front, beer business is a lot different than it was 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago, where everyone bought Bud or Bud Light. Now there's all these little companies, names you've ever heard of, that are super popular. So I think that the small guys, if they run their brand well, will survive.
Yeah, I think that's true. All the boutique places will be okay.
Yeah.
They won't be huge, but they'll be okay.
They'll be able to make a living.
And let's be serious at this point. The linchpin that sits here is the DEA deregulating, or declassifying the schedule for marijuana.
No.
And then all of a sudden, I think you're going to see the entire market industry shift. But you're all right to a certain extent in your analysis of things. Even though big corporations may come in, got my nose on the mainland. It's like, Nantucket Sativa 101. Oh, that is the greatest stuff in the world. Let's get that. in a place, not unlike one of our two industries here, would have no problem being able to ship it over to the mainland and have it sold there. So, it becomes a lot more of a free market process. So as much as there may be a fear of large industry taking over, I think Dave's analysis is somewhat correct that you can't dismiss the local stuff. And, some people, it's like I guess to a certain extent too, it's like buying tomatoes. Do you want your tomatoes from the Stop and Shop, which are perfectly fine, or do you want your really good craft tomatoes from Bartlett Farm? And
Or
there you
from your
go.
community lot that you're growing them on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the future is murky and unclear and is up to anyone's guess. But like I said, until things change in DC, here we are left with conjecture and just trying to make things happen bit by bit here.
Well, if you remember in the first quarter, those earning reports were just awful. Second quarter earning reports are coming up in the next week or so. We'll see how that looks, if it's any better.
Yep, I agree.
Because none of those large corporations made any money in that first quarter. They lost substantial amounts of money.
Yep. Shock, go ahead.
Want to get off the subject for a little bit. I just had a question, maybe Melissa can answer this. Did we increase the number of liquor licenses this year?
No,
last
we
year?
didn't.
Okay.
No. There are some licenses, and I can't recall which it is, where there have been one or two more granted than the formula allows for, but that was a pre-existing condition. It may be because the liquor licenses are based on population. So it may have been at a different calculation. The existing inventory of, say, package stores put us 2 over. So that just simply meant we couldn't grant any more. But no, we have not permissed any additional licenses.
No, and just real quickly, you'll know if that happens because it will be the center of a warrant article at town meeting where that change has to take place at. So be prepared for that one if and when it does. Dave?
But the cannabis licenses are based on liquor store doors, correct? Not liquor licenses per se, right? Is that right, Melissa?
I don't know.
I think it's based off of licenses, Dave.
Like all licenses are just liquor store doors?
I believe I have to go back and look.
When you say liquor store, you mean package store?
Store doors. Yeah.
I don't recall.
That was my understanding.
the formula is.
That's why I'm asking. Okay.
Well,
I mean, I can, if you give me a minute, I can maybe get you a quick answer, but otherwise.
I think the other, just to sort of tack on to a little bit about the conversation previously, as fascinating as it is about sort of national companies and how they're doing, I think the most important thing we can focus on is the health of our community and the health of the businesses that are here and where that intersection is. So I love some of the conversations that we were having earlier around, the possibility of recommending delivery. And I did see some articles that was happening on the Cape, and I didn't sort of follow up on that to see how that was going in some different communities. But I just think it's really important for this commission to stay focused on our community and how best to support community members having equitable access to medical and recreational marijuana, and the health of the businesses and what those requirements are that they have to meet. Because I think we're always going to be different, just like that Nantucket way. We will always be a little different.
Here we go. Go ahead. I'm just on a different screen here at the moment to see if I can get that answer for you on the fly.
So I have a question,
Yeah.
for instance, let's say someone wanted to get a license for delivering, that, can that be granted now, or does that go under the 2 licenses or 3 licenses we have available? I thought that there was my understanding was that a separate license for, let's say, for delivery would be sort of held in the same licensing bracket as people growing. If I might be wrong with that, but that's why my question is. Because the licenses for growing and selling are, well, the licenses for selling are limited by the formula with the liquor store or the package store.
There it is.
But I thought that also limited the other licenses such as delivery were done in that equation, the liquor store equation.
Here, hang on just for a minute. I want to go back to the licensing thing. Let me do a screen share here. There we go. Can you all see that?
Yes,
Okay, there you go. So 20% of the year-round licenses, and under my last calculation, when I did this less than a year ago, it was 9 licenses total that the town had made permissible under which to do it. So there's your 2 that comes out of that equation.
but isn't it my understanding that the 20% can be changed by the select board? Is that true?
It would actually have to be this, anyone could change this. This could actually even be a citizens warrant article, but it's going to have to pass through the rigors of getting to town meeting. So,
Town meeting. Yeah, it's not just a simple policy change.
right, it's not, they are not, just because of the nature of what this article is, it has to go through that process. So, ultimately you've got select board, planning board who may comment on it, FinCom definitely, and then the will of the people at town meeting to make that change. And that'll be true for and Melissa, you can chime in here, that'd be true for the liquor licenses as well too. I don't have that up. But I do remember examining this, like I said, probably within about the past 6 months to a year, and confirming that there were only 9 liquor licenses that the town had authorized at that juncture. And that again is in, that's in our bylaws for the town. Does that help bring some clarification a little bit?
But to
Clear as mud.
get back to the question that was asked about delivery. Is
Oh, all right.
delivery a separate license? This talks about marijuana retailers being at 20%. Does that mean that outside of this definition, you can have delivery?
Yes, because the license only extends itself to marijuana retailers. So for instance, Bartlett Farm doing their growing thing doesn't fall under this. Okay. So and as far as I know with deliveries, although I'm trying to remember the last conversation I had on that, that was also a function of it wasn't quite out there yet to be permissible to do it. Sorry, I gotta stop that share. There we go. There we go. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just making things worse instead of better. Does that help a little bit though, guys?
Yeah.
And certainly if you do your own independent research and I'm wrong, please educate me, will you?
Barry, I think what might be helpful is if there are questions that we want to get clarification on, that, we submit a memo to town manager, and if she needs, council's opinion on anything, then she can get it, certainly,
Yeah.
but she could give us a response to make sure that we're not making guesses and we have all the information that we need to make whatever decision or recommendation we want to come back with.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you at this point. And certainly I think that, with all due respect to the town manager, I would probably just put in a simple request to town council and
Sure.
get the absolute definitive opinion. I mean, I'm just viewing our conversations right now as being a little more generalized, but if you are all feeling like you want to track into a direction or feeling like, again, this is all out there in black and white. But if you're feeling like you want something more definitive, certainly, just say the word and we'll try to make something happen with town council.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's a lot of gaps in information on some of the requirements of licenses or the Cannabis Control Commission, and that may come off the top easily with staff and give us some of the answers we need more quickly.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay.
I remember at a meeting earlier, I was taking the position that we should not allow delivery by an independent company. We should have delivery only limited to the two establishments. And I recall somebody from one of the two establishments explained why delivery was not in the cards for them, but I don't remember the reason for it now.
Go ahead, Dave.
I've had that discussion with an owner of one off island, and it was the state regulations that were, I mean, basically you have to have an armored car with a
Yes.
safe in it.
Yes.
So I think that the expense is prohibitive, especially when you're talking about a 100-day season. And I think that's probably what has held back people locally, and whether the Cannabis Commission's changed those rules. I know that they went through a bunch of changes, but last I heard it was because of the expensive regulation, as you call it, Joe.
Do you think it's limited to 100 days a year?
I think the profitable portion of it is limited, yes. I think that they're busy, and with two open, I think that they probably do 80 to 90% of their business in 100 days. But I could be wrong. Nicole could correct me, I'm sure, but yes, I would say that they do a large percentage of their business in 100 days. Especially when people come here from states that don't have legal marijuana.
Yes.
There she is. Okay. Anything else, ladies, gentlemen? Okay. All right, so we'll look at the host agreements next month, see where we're at with that, hopefully get a little bit more. I'm not 100% confident. It is August into the throes of summer, and time is precious. We're all busy people. Go ahead, Melissa.
Barry, just to refresh my memory, and I think you said it earlier, but just to be clear, we're reviewing the host agreements with the idea that anything that we think needs modification or change, we're going to send back to the select board as a recommendation.
Yes, ma'am.
And is there a time frame that we're looking at to do that?
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
there's not. It was this started out a few months ago.
Okay.
And part of what triggered that conversation was, what town council was offering us at that
Mhm.
juncture.
Mm-hmm.
And so the board was like, all right, well, let's look into it and just see what's there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if there are other missives that or that the select board feels like they want us to be working on, that's fine. But
Well, I think that's what I will report back in a couple of weeks when we have our August meeting is just that, and see if there's any feedback or from any of the board members. I just wanted to be clear that that's one of the things that we're looking at and make sure I'm reporting out correctly.
Yeah, and I would, I'd also probably say there's no guarantee they're going to get anything from this. This may just be a conversation that's being had
Mhm.
by this board. So I don't want, anyone on the board thinking, well, this is all going to happen and why is that going on behind a curtain somewhere?
Mhm.
Is this new host agreement a replacement agreement for the two existing ones, or is there a third one that's being planned, or is there some other thing going on in the background?
I'm just going to say to you, it's up to this board as part of being a cannabis advisory committee to make make that determination of what directions we were going to take it. My understanding was to do the review and see if there were any revisions that we thought should take place, one, and then two, possibly design a new host agreement for the future. But again, I have to put the caveat in that if you do it, you're still limited to two licenses. So you can create as much documentation as you want,
Right.
but until that changes. So, the
But
more,
wouldn't that be necessary if if one of the two establishments said, okay, we're gonna do delivery? Wouldn't we need an agreement for that?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the host agreement with the town, the only triggering part of that, and the key phrase is when you bring that up, it says retail establishments. Okay, there's the linchpin behind it, retail establishments. Because I initially was under that same premise that any type of cannabis related thing that would happen out here needed to go through the whole rigmarole of things. If something does come up with delivery, they still have to make application to the Cannabis Control Commission. They still have to make application to the select board, but the whole host agreement and everything else begins to change. Okay. So, and right now I'm, you're looking at over the course of 5 years, there's only really been, to my knowledge, 3 such things that have come into play. The 2 industries we have right now and Bartlett Farm. And I can only say to you, as I know with Bartlett Farm, that we were somehow supposed to be included in that conversation. And then that just kind of fell by the wayside. And, that's not something I fortunately can control, but so be it.
Probably a smart move by Bartlett Farm, frankly.
I have, again, that would have been the responsibility of the town manager to have, decided whether we should. I think the thought was there initially, and then, like I said, it just fell by the wayside. So I can't answer that any further. And I made a personal decision. We're not going to pursue it any further at the moment.
Yep.
Anything else y'all have?
No.
No. All right. So unless there's nothing else for our next meeting, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All right, roll call. Jacques,
motion to adjourn, or second? I already seconded, yeah.
yeah, so you're going to say either aye or nay.
Aye, sorry.
Okay, unless you're going to hang around for a while more. It's good. No, it's been get some good conversation. Good. Melissa,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
chair votes aye as well too. Thank you everyone for your precious time. I do appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
Hey, guys.
Hi, everybody.
Bye-bye. Take care. Thanks
Bye.
for joining in, Nicole. Thanks, Bob.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.